I'm seeing some of the same faces that I've already been through this once, so I'll try not to, be redundant. But I did open last time just because that in a year's time, which seems like several years to me, that, from the tornado to the pandemic, that much has transpired. But last year was a very, very difficult year for the school district, and not just the school district, really for everyone, because we, and I'm using the collective, we did not know what we were going to be facing with resources. We didn't know what the impact was going to be on the county. No one had any idea. You couldn't predict it. But we went into the year with almost a $10 million deficit, trying to get to a status quo or balanced budget, and started looking at those reductions of what we could cut without really impacting people in programs. And so by the time that we reduced, we got it down to about $6.5 million, and then that's when, again, as I shared with you last week, as far as what we did to get to that final bit, that as far as we requested that the debt payments for the general purpose school funds, which was $1.9 million, be picked up by the general debt service, which we later reimbursed. We then deferred the payment, that one-time payment into the employee insurance fund, that was $3.6 million, trying to bring it down. And by the time we got there, we used not only growth, but also our fund balance to zero it out. What we didn't know and could not have predicted, after our budget was approved in June, the state cut BEP funds across the state, and our portion that was cut was $1.6 million that we didn't anticipate. So it was like all that we did to get where we were, and by this time, we're right in the throes of the pandemic, trying to plan for the next school year. The first round of ESSER came through, that Emergency Relief Act for elementary and secondary, and we were scrambling trying to figure out how we were going to have school. But the thing was that we did what everyone else had to do, was buckle up and make sure that we could cover best we could with existing staff, because we also opened up a new high school and did a round robin of reducing staff of the 4 other high schools to cover Green Hill High School best that we could. And then, if you'll remember, the displaced schools, we put 7th and 8th grade out. We put K-5 with Stoner Creek into Mount Juliet Middle School, and the 6th grade from 2 middle schools. So it was an interesting year. So with that, we fast forward. And again, the charge is a status quo budget. And as we related last week, and as Michael Smith very assuredly told you, that we've come back with better than a status quo. And that's why we took the time to walk through every element of this budget to show you where not only did we make cuts, but also where we moved things to the appropriate lines. There's over 7,000 line items in a school district budget, not unique to us, but that's just because of what we have to do with when you look at not only your local, look at your state, and look at your federal, look at your restricted accounts. So it's all there. What I want to do, as far as just briefly take those that were not here and walk you through, the amount of the fund balance used to fund recurring items for fiscal year 2022 is $4.6 million. And the thing is that, just as a reminder, as we did last year, that the county commission, we're hoping will put more money into the general purpose school fund to make up what we're taking out of fund balance each year to fund our budget for recurring expenses, so the fund balance can be maintained at a fund balance of at least 10% of operating expenditures to sustain any economic downturn, and to create a buffer for any budget estimates that may change for any reason. And the best thing that, again, last June, we had no idea that we were going to get hit with a $1.6 million. So with it, and if for those of you that have the copy of the book in front of you, just to go through, as far as you have a summary sheet, as far as walking you through, as far as where we were with general fund revenues, out of fund number 141, our general fund expenditures, that puts us at a negative, or a deficit of $4.6 million. And then I'll walk you through as far as how we reduce that to where we're 2.2 million going into our fund balance. You're going to see our school federal projects revenues out of account 142, it's balanced. You're going to see our central cafeteria fund revenues out of account 143, balanced as well. You're going to see the extended school program revenues out of account 146, it's balanced. And I'll walk you through this so you can see how this equates. And then line, or account 177, which is your educational capital projects revenues, you're going to see down there where you see a deficit of 46.6 million. And as we shared last week, that is where the insurance funds reside, where it's in a split year, because what is required by the auditors now, where we never had to put our insurance proceeds for whatever it might be as showing as being held, but that is now a requirement that we have to, for auditors, show that. And so you're showing that deficit because it's held between 2 years, and I'll show you as we walk through this where it sits. Your first general fund, looking at 141, and I want to bring to your attention, and I'm hoping, and I'm going to attribute this to Michael. Many of the times where you see where the lines, as far as where we either see an increase or we see a decrease, you're going to see over there in the margin on the right side, you'll either see a 6%, I mean, there's an increase there. You'll see like down for current services, a negative 17%, and you'll see these adjustments as they take place. And so as you're going through, you'll see the fiscal year 2020 with your actual revenues, and just you can follow it across. Your fiscal year 2021, the original budget, fiscal year 2021, the revised budget, and then you'll look at the proposed 2022, and looking at when you see how that is broken out, and you'll see where we catch it up in the other sections of the budget book. If you'll go all the way to the bottom, and you'll see the other sources, non-revenue, 49,800, the transfers in, you'll see there's an increase of about 1.7 million from where we were. And looking at that, you'll see that there's a 79% increase, and I'll talk to you about where that resides and how we arrive at that number. So your total revenues for the general fund, if you're looking again and go across the bottom there, you're seeing a 3% increase with a fiscal year 2022 at $161,978,034.
Dr. Wright?
Yes, sir.
I have a question. Initially, you said you would have a 10% of your budget for a surplus for bad times.
That's what we're hoping to get our fund balance to.
How much is that?
Well, how you get as far as when you're looking at that 10%, 10% of your operating budget.
Okay, which you have an approximate amount what that would be?
Not yet until we get that all balanced out, but we've been barely above the operating, what we're allowed 3%.
I understand.
Yeah. So,
I'm just wondering what the total 10% might be.
well, once we get everything finalized with our budget and where we land with revenues, I'll be able to give you
Okay.
but the rule of thumb, John, is just 10% of what our final operating budget is.
Right, I understand that.
Okay.
And I thought maybe you'd have an estimate. Okay, thank you.
You also have in there, as far as something that we did as a reminder too, as far as the weighted full-time equivalent, as far as our how our funds are dispersed. You know, we share what we receive with a special school district, and the breakout there is 84.13%, and Lebanon Special School District will get 15.8% out of every dollar collected, and sometimes that is forgotten. Anything that we draw for a K-8, we split that. If there's money that's borrowed through bonds or whatever, if we're building a K-8 structure, whatever we borrow, we have to make sure that we take into account what will be the part that's given to the special school district. If you'll remember, Gladeville Middle School was built for around $46 million. And we borrowed close to $56 million to cover that, just as for those that weren't around at that time. Okay, under 141 expenditures, I'm going to do a quick through as far as this is regular instruction. This is where you're going to see much of our budget is dedicated to. And you'll look on that, again, that right hand side, you'll see there's been a 5% increase in our regular instruction. This is where you're going to find our teachers, as far as we've got 1,080 budgeted positions, plus one. We've got approximately 20 to 25 growth positions. Again, that's an anticipation as far as making sure that we have the teachers after school starts, that if we have to hire with, particularly in elementary school, if we go over ratio in a classroom, you have to hire a teacher, if it's 1 over the ratio. When you get into high schools, you've got greater latitude with grade bands, but again, if it's built into the budget, we have that buffer if we have to hire additional teachers. You will see the piece there as far as career ladder. That's something that is about to roll out. That's been there since the early or late 80s, and that as those people retire, that will be a line item that's reimbursed from the state that will move through. You have your educational assistants, that's your support staff. We have 99 support positions in the county. You have, if you look at all your benefits as far as Social Security, all that breaks out, but when you get down to the bottom line there on that total regular instruction, you see a 5% increase in the last 2 years, and we're at $82,287,481. But this, again, is what takes into account your teachers, your instructional materials, your support staff, contracted services. Normally, we take our textbooks out of there. That was the other thing that we deferred last year, was $1.2 million in textbooks, with a reminder that we would need an additional $3 million this year for our ELA adoption. And as I shared with this group, we are looking at the possibility of using our ESSER dollars. Again, those are those emergency funds that we can defer having to come and place that before the commission. Not only the ELA, which is going to be, again, a little over $3 million, but math adoption comes up next. It's a very expensive adoption when you look at K-12, and then the next one being science. So that would be something that we can defer, and it's a legitimate use of those dollars. Again, regular instruction takes up the biggest portion of the budget. If you look at 71,200, that's your special ed instruction. As far as we have 89 special ed teachers, and again, that breaks out. You're seeing a 2% increase in our special ed line, and you'll see that over at the very bottom line there. That takes in not only your assistants, it takes in your speech pathologists. It looks at also some of the programming that's needed, such as instructional supplies and materials, some of the special materials that are needed because of your special ed department, and looking at the different disabilities that our teachers work with. 71,300, that's voc ed instruction. You're going to see on that line, you're seeing a 2% cut as far as looking at that, and some of these cuts are because they were in the wrong line items and we moved them to the appropriate accounts. But looking at total instruction, you're going to see a 4% increase there. What comes under vocational ed instruction, you have 90 teachers under the regular vocational ed, which will include 1 for growth and 2 open positions that have not been filled. Again, you have your benefits that are within there as well. You've got maintenance and repair of equipment, because when you look at what takes place in vocational instruction, whether it's culinary arts, whether you're looking at some of our high-tech programs, including health services, we have equipment that needs to be repaired. And then you see, as far as instructional supplies and materials, that will run upwards of around $70,000 just for to equip our 5 high schools, plus some of our middle schools are picking up some vocational programs starting in this next school year. Your next is attendance, 72,110. There's no change in the budget there. You'll see that 0%. And this is, we have 1 employee, Stan Moss, which is, we are required by state law to have an attendance supervisor. And not only does he track down students and make sure that they're in school, he also does home visits. He also is our liaison working with the truancy court, works very closely with Judge Tatum. And then you'll see as far as what is allocated to that department, but there's no change in that one. Your next is Health Services, 72,120. This came out of a state grant almost a decade ago. It's now a requirement as far as coordinated school health in our schools. You have the one supervisor. He has also been our COVID lead, not only for our school district, but also working with county health services. And we have, under him, we have 25 nursing positions. So where you see, as far as the medical personnel, we are reimbursed by the state for nurses at 1 to every 3,000 kids qualifies for a nurse. And so if you look at the number of what we would be reimbursed from the state, we would qualify for 6 nurses. We have 23, we've got 24 campuses, but 23 that would require a nurse, and we have 25 nurses. We're very fortunate in this district. And if anything, this last year has been one that's really caused some issues with other districts that are lobbying hard that they need a nurse as well. And all of our nurses are RNs. And again, you'll see what comes under that department as well as, yes, ma'am.
Okay, you said this is the first year to have this position, is that correct? Is that because of COVID? Did I misunderstand?
Who, Chuck Whitlock?
Supervisor director.
No, what it was, he was under a different account number, but he's been doing the work, plus he supervises the nurses, plus he does athletics. And, yeah, you know him. So he carries quite a load, but it was moving him into the right department. Other student support, that's 72,130. You're seeing where we have made a cut of almost minus 4%. And if you'll look at that, as far as where this is where you find your guidance counselors, and there's 45 positions that come under guidance, and there's one that's being held for growth, particularly at our high school levels, and possibly at one elementary school will pick up an additional counselor just simply because of the size of the school. And in this, again, you're seeing supplies, materials, you're looking at in-service staff development that we're required to provide, and a very active student support that, again, is required. Instructional support is 72,210. You're seeing a -6 of where you're seeing that cut there. If you'll look at the proposed budget for 22 and then go to the left as far as looking at the revised budget, you'll see there's a reduction there. And again, this is where when you look at instructional support, you're seeing your supervisors that are working out of the central office. Many of them are also itinerant, which I mean that they're out working with the schools, whether it's content, working with teachers, working with administrators. You're also going to find your librarians that come under there. We have 23 librarians. And just as a note, Rutland, because they have 2 campuses, they have 2 librarians as far as an efficiency there.
Dr. Wright.
Yes, sir.
Can we go back one? You said the nurses, are they not paid through the hospital, or do they paid through the school system?
For 6 of them, they're paid, we get BEP funding from the state.
Okay.
The additional are paid out of our funds.
Okay.
As part of our budget.
So do they get everything the teachers get?
Well, everything, they're on a different contract. Teachers are on a 200-day contract, 180 days of instruction. Our nurses are on a 200-day contract, but 190 day of work, and then 10 days of vacation throughout the year.
Okay.
So,
like when I know there's a $1,000, what is it, bonus?
Bonus that's coming out this.
Will the nurses get
Yes.
that? Okay.
Everyone that's employed by, as of May 1st, will
Okay.
qualify for that. In fact, I'm glad you asked, because there was a couple of them that just picked up on the fact that the bonus was coming out, and they thought they'd been excluded, and that, no.
I'd heard that, so I thought
So, okay, thanks for asking, so we can clarify that. But again, instructional support, those are the people that support what the teachers are doing in the classroom, from curriculum to testing and assessment, all the pieces, so teachers can do the job that they do and be supported in that work. And you're seeing a reduction in that department. Special ed support, this is 72,220. And again, you have, as far as looking at your supervisor, there is no change. It's 0 change in this particular budget line. And you've got where you've got your psychologicals as far as that provide support, there's 12 positions there. You've got assessment personnel that comes out of there. And then you break down as far as our contract with private agencies. Sometimes where we cannot provide services with students with serious disabilities, we have to contract with outside agencies to provide those services. It depends on the disability. For example, we've got, you know, some youngsters that will go to Columbia, Tennessee. There's a special agency there that works with students with a certain disability. We've got students that and can be provide services out of a special school in Nashville. And it just depends, but we try as hard as we can to meet those needs. But if there's something that we cannot provide the services, then we can do contract out. It not contract with who?
Is there not a contractor in Wilson County?
Not with some of the specific disabilities that we have to. If there's someone that can meet it, yes, absolutely, absolutely. In fact, we would provide that.
EMA's got to meet just for 5 minutes, we'll be back in on the tape.
Well, this is a repeat performance for you, but thank you. Thank
We'll
you.
be right back.
And Jerry, that's a really good question because people don't always understand that the special needs. So that we'll do everything we can to meet in-house, and it's only based on some of those that are very serious disabilities that will go outside that. Again, there's no change, no difference in that budget. Vocational ed support, 72,230. This was, we have a line item that we put in the appropriate place. You'll see that there was an increase there. It was just because we moved out of another line. We needed a bookkeeper that would be working and more or less providing oversight for CTE grants and awards. There's a lot of money coming in through CTE. And because of much of it being federal dollars and very restricted, we have to make sure that someone not only is overseeing it, but making sure that it's spent appropriately and by the guidelines. So we have a bookkeeper that is all that she does. And just an example, I think I shared with the group, just this last month alone, we've received almost $1 million coming into the Career Technical Education Department, and so they'll be providing oversight on that. And so that, that's okay.
Did you say that position came from another department?
But we just moved over, but we have to show that that's an increase for that department, because
What
you have one.
department did it come out of, do you remember?
I'll find it because you'll see where it moves. But there's only the one supervisor and then the bookkeeper that reports to Jake Hammond, who's our. The next one is technology, and this is one that's been really active and really understaffed, but it's 72,250. The supervisor before Brandon Cook was Tom Waller, who we recognized last week. And you'll see that we've made a reduction in that account as far as making sure that we've got people in the right places, looking at where we had a replication of services. And so we had 17 positions, and we eliminated a position that we are not going to fill, and so that's why you're seeing part of that reduction. There was one position that was eliminated, and we will not be filling it. Yes, sir.
The $2 million down here on 399, is that for equipment?
Okay, where are you going?
Second to the bottom there, $2 million.
Oh, as far as other contracted services, and let me see, let me go back to my notes specifically on that. Much of it being, we moved some of the programs that we were paying out of these accounts, and we're going to be moving it into the ESSER grants, and some of the things that we were not pulling that out of the technology. For example, let me see, we moved $140,000 out of that was dedicated to a reading program. It's called Renaissance Learning. And so when you see that amount that's been reduced, if you go across the year before, and so $2 million will be for those contracted services that go to programming. That's of course like the software. Yeah. So that one's mostly for software as far as reading programs, math programs that supports instruction. The Board of Ed, and this one again, obviously 72,310, And we made some adjustments there, and you'll look at a 75% increase. And we talked about this last week, because what we have moved the liability insurance and the workman's comp under the Board of Education. And it's moved out of another account, and I'll show you when we get there as far as how that was moved out. So that bumped that budget for the Board of Ed by 75% because of that. And let me see, the liability insurance, as far as we moved there, is about 1.4 million, and you're seeing, let me see, workman's comp insurance, which is probably underestimated, but this has been a bumper year for workman's comp. So, and it's 519,000 that comes under that. This is also where our board is paid, which is the same as what county commissioners are paid. It comes out of there, as well as their dues and things that they must participate with in. The superintendent's office, which you'll notice, again, there's a change there as far as from the 21 revised budget to 22. There's a salary difference, so you'll see that as far as a reduction in that column. And I'll just have to say Mr. Luttrell's starting out brand new, and so that's where you'll see his salary, and then it's just the breakdown that comes out of that office as far as office supplies. Yes.
How do the other salaries wages used?
We have I have an assistant.
Well, it says secretary, but it says another salary, wages. Fourth line down.
Yeah, I mean, I see, hold on just a minute. Because there's others that come out of my, yeah, Bart Barker, I'm sorry. Our PIO, it comes out of my department and didn't before. Thank you, Jeff. You need to speak up a little louder there. You're reading it faster than I am. And he's been a very good addition. He's going on his third year with us. The office of the principal is 72,410. You've got 23 principals as far as looking at that breakdown, with the addition of a new principal that was not included in a previous budget. You've got 22 bookkeepers and 46 assistant principals, 3 new ones at Green Hill High School, Gladeville Middle, and Rutland Elementary, as far as that will be added for this next year's budget. We have 66 secretaries when you're looking at that, and then you also see included in this budget administrative phones, as far as what our administrators are obligated to make sure that they carry on them at all time. You've got the copier funds and just the office supply funds for each of the schools come out of office of the principal. And you see just a 3% increase in budget. And then you've got fiscal services. This is Michael's office, 72,510. And we've also made some, as far as positioning, as far as an appropriate department under him, and you'll see where there's a 6% increase in this particular budget line, but you're seeing 11 total positions. These are bookkeepers and accountants that report in his department, and looking at the benefits that go with that as well. You're also going to see, and he brought this up, that he's required to keep his CPA training up, so there's an allocation there as far as in service, which you're going to see in other departments as well. And then data processing services, the supplies, all that under his department. Human resources, 72,520. You're seeing a 6% increase here. And much of it is devoted to HR advertising, and that sounds like a misnomer when you see that, but when you look at the work that they must present, whether it's looking for personnel, if it's looking as far as everything for workman's comp to Title IX regulations, as far as that comes under advertising, and you see that increase there. When you look at 9 positions as far as in human resources and all that they do and support our district, which all told, you're looking at almost 2,400 employees, and 9th largest district. Again, I keep re-emphasizing that out of 145 school districts, we're 9th largest in the state. You've also got in-service and staff development. They also take care of fingerprinting, background checks, that kind of thing that will also be paid out of their department. Let's see. And then operational plant. You're seeing Steve Spencer is the supervisor here, and we see where we've seen a decline in this budget. It's been reduced, and we're looking at really one position here, but when you look at the cost, and this is where we moved out the liability, and the workman's comp insurance had been under this, and that's where it was moved into another department. If you'll remember, the Board of Education was where it was moved. You're also going to see, as far as other contracted services, as far as whether it's communications, you're looking at a line item 415 for electricity. That's with Middle Tennessee Electric Service as well as Johnson Controls. You're looking at natural gas, which is 434, the City of Lebanon, Piedmont Gas, AmeriGas, Middle Tennessee Natural Gas, and where we're paying the different utility companies. Water and sewer, same thing as far as that goes, the City of Lebanon, Mount Juliet, West Wilson Utility, Gladeville, and Watertown. We also have to make sure that there's things that we do, everything from sampling water for lead. There's looking at the roofing and masonry work. Even crossing guards come out of this group right here. So you're talking about, even though there's a reduction in that particular budget, what comes under that account. Maintenance of plant 72620, Mitch Fox was moved to a supervisor position. That's one that I addressed last week in our needs assessment. When I came here 7 years ago, there were 21 individuals maintaining our campuses. We are now up to 24 campuses that need to be maintained. We still have 21. And if one or two that are looking at retirement, I'm not quite sure that we can replace them because of the salaries. So you're looking at 21 positions, and if you're looking at the line items there, you're seeing that there's no change in this budget. It's at zero. It's the same that it has been, so there's no adjustment there. Transportation, 72,710. Again, there's a 1% change or an adjustment there. And Jerry Partlow is the supervisor. We have 103 full-time bus drivers. That's not counting our part-time. And with that, we have, as far as looking at the communication piece, comes under there, laundry services, maintenance and repair of equipment, maintenance and repair of vehicles, diesel fuel. Looking at your equipment and machinery parts, we do, and our bus shops do our own work as far as mechanical work. You're looking at gasoline, utilities, and again, that comes under transportation. And this is one that we continue to have difficulty, but we're not the only ones. This is a national issue across the country as far as having bus drivers that can transport kids to and from school. And in the short term, it doesn't look like it's going to be getting any better. And then there's as far as some of the expenditures that you're looking at, as far as total COVID-19 expenditures, those were some initial dollars that we received. You're seeing as far as 100% and where we will be getting that back, and I'll show you that when we get to expenditures and just the total support services. Community services, 73,300. Again, there was a 25% increase in there, and you've got 5 full-time and 8 part-time helping in that department. And just early childhood education, Annie Barger's the supervisor there, 73,400. You're seeing a reduction in that department. You're looking at pre-K, which is somewhat subsidized by the state. You're looking at a 60-40 split on funding on early childhood education. And there's 11 positions dedicated to that. Make sure I've covered. And then you've got some information there as far as looking at debt service, looking at total expenditures for the general fund, and I think that's on, let me see, well, your pages aren't numbered, I don't think, but that's at the back there. 142, which is your revenue. That's your school federal projects. Going through that quickly. This, on your general school projects, we're looking at an additional ESSER, and I forgot to share that with you at the back for those of you that are just, in the back, you've got a sort of a miscellaneous in your notebook as far as that I'll touch on in a minute, so you can see not only on the federal funds that we're getting as far as under that Emergency Care Act and how it's dedicated, but I also want to touch base on the per pupil allocation, because that's becoming really significant in Wilson County on our ability to pay. So I want to make sure that I do touch on that. Our ESSER 1 we received last spring. It was a little over $1.2 million. That became significant in helping the 2 displaced schools. We lost over 2,000 devices, and so had to replace those. We also were getting the PPE as far as what we were going to need to be operational, which everyone was. And so that offset that, even though there was a promise from the state that every school would receive the face mask, the sanitizer, whatever you would need to clean for a year, and we never received any of that. But we weren't the only district. There was several small districts that received it, but we never did get what was promised. And so there was a lot of our own, as far as funding that we had not budgeted for, that had to be dedicated to that. ESSER 2 has just been finished. It came in about $5.6 million. That's what we're using as far as to offset a request from the commission for the budget. Remember the ELA textbooks, the $1.2 million that we couldn't buy last year, rolls into almost a little over $3 million this year. We're using our ESSER $2, and there's documentation in the back so you can see how that is being used, that had been deferred. And then the money that ESSER 3 will not be seen until August. We received about $12.5 million, and if you'll remember, it's not that we're not grateful for that, but when you look at comparability with surrounding districts, we did not get even close to. Wilson and Williamson County did not receive anything that was comparable to what Rutherford Metro Schools received, nearly $500 million. Part of it's economically disadvantaged, and no, Metro, Nashville. Rutherford on this ESSER 3, I think got close to $50 million, and we got 12.5. Some of your smaller that are Title I or economically disadvantaged, Murfreesboro City received as much as we did, have half of our schools. And so it's on that ability to pay plus economically disadvantaged, but grateful. And the thing that's tied to this ESSER 3, we have to dedicate 20% with state approval on learning loss. What is it you're going to do to mitigate learning loss? And which is good. However, that's something we were working on from the very beginning when school came back into session. So that's there. They'll also be looking at, as far as those upcoming adoptions in math and science, we're going to look at the very things that we've had to come to commission as far as under textbook and materials. So go over that. Again, when you're looking at 142 expenditures, you've got it broken out as far as line items. You'll see where it will match up with what I just went through on your revenues, and when you look at the reductions. 143 is your central cafeteria fund, which is a self-funded, but it's a balanced budget. There's no change or difference there, even though this has been a tough year, because every child, regardless of their economic disposition, receives free lunch and breakfast. And it's continued through next year as well. We will also be feeding students through the summer, much like what we did last year as well. And then, let me see, 143 expenditures, that breaks out for you as well. On the food services, you'll see as far as we have 22 positions, 22 full-time positions. It's all broken out, and you'll see the reduction in that department, looking in that right-hand column. You've got your extended school program fund. That's balanced as well. There's no addition there. You're looking at our kids club and our learning center that we run as after-school programs. 146, your expenditures on your community services, you're going to see the reduction there again on when you look at the right-hand margin. And the breakout of there as well, you've got 22 full-time positions, 24 what we refer to as temporary positions that are full-time, but that breaks out as well, and no request there. Educational Capital Projects Fund, the 177, we do not have to budget this section, but we want to present it so you could see this. And again, if you'll remember what I said at the very beginning, as far as the 46 million that shows as a deficit, and those are the insurance funds that we've received to date that are split between years, so you will see where that is accounted, and you can follow across on there. 177 on your expenditures, that gives you a better breakdown. Again, the insurance proceeds, that you see that negative 68%, and it creates a deficit again, because that's money that we have to show for auditing purposes under our educational capital projects. Your miscellaneous, as far as you've got in the back, you've got a breakdown of all 145 school districts as far as how they come up with that per pupil allocation. And it's really kind of simple, but this has been created by the comptroller's office. It's not created by us. We are right at $8,200 per pupil allocation. We are at the bottom in the state. Bedford County is about $200 below us. And how that is calculated, again, is by the number of students divided into your general purpose operating budget. And your general purpose operating budget is what, as far as that's what supports the school. I know the question came up, and I'm the first to say that when you look at our capital plan and what this commission has done to support the buildings in this county, second to none. Second to none. But that is not how they calculate as far as looking at that per pupil allocation. Our economically disadvantaged population has gone down, it's diminished. So when we see what the state allocates us, that's the part that I really want to emphasize, that our ability to pay increases as the state's ability of what they will give us based on our per capita. And Williamson County is in that same situation. They are the wealthiest county in the state. Wilson County is calculated as the second. And so that, when it comes down to that BEP funding from the state, we are, we suffer, we're penalized for it, for lack of a better term. So we are trying to not only see as far as building that capacity, because again, that goes into, teachers, your funding and all that, but all that information is there. You also have a breakdown there at the back of how we're spending those ESSER 1, ESSER 2 dollars, because I think that's important. So you'll see how that will help offset what we request from the county commission. And we're working through ESSER 3, and that's not due until August. And I think I brought up, in fact, I think Commissioner Smith asked the question as far as looking at facilities and air quality. Rumor, a really strong rumor on the street, that there's going to be an additional allocation, ESSER 4, and listening to our colleagues out of DC, that it will be earmarked for facilities, whether it's, I think I also shared with you the average age of a public school building in this country is around 80 years. But the big thing that they're focusing on is air quality, and much of it's because of the COVID reaction. We don't know when it'll be released. We don't know if it's going to be next fall. We don't know how much it is. But the thing is that they're already saying that it'll be facilities if it is released. And I have no reason to think that it will not, simply because of what's coming out from some of the national superintendents organizations as far as that focus. And then, as I'm talking really fast and trying to make sure, the needs assessment, and as I referred to it the other night, it's really a critical needs of where we are right now. And it's not prioritized, but it might as well be. Right now, we are really suffering at the area as far as our classified staff. And classifieds all of your support staff. It could take everything from your educational assistants to your bus drivers to your food services. Anyone that's not a classroom teacher comes under this guideline. They have not received a raise in 4 years. Those that got to the fourth year received, the equivalent of 50 cents. We cannot compete with what's happening out in the business world. Our EAs right now are looking at about $9.50 an hour to start. Metro's going to snap them up because they pay far better. Our food services are starting at $10 an hour. Rutherford County pays $13.25 an hour. Our bus drivers are in a pretty good place. Bus drivers are unique simply because of the competition for the skills that they can provide, particularly if they have the CDL license. I think it was over the weekend, Rutherford County's even announced that they're going to put in a 4% increase for their classified or support staff. So we are competing with others that are not only paying better, and loyalty only goes so far. I'm asking for a 5% raise across the board for our classified staff. Our teachers are in a good place. Thank you, County Commission, for supporting and pushing through the sales tax referendum because they received a historical raise this year. Amounts that, according to my colleagues, no one else in the state did see. But again, thank you, particularly during a very trying time. What we are, and putting this on Jeff Luttrell, we need to do a comparative study as far as our classified personnel next year to see what that comparability, looking at surrounding districts and where they are. That's something that's not been done in quite some time, and we need to. But in the meantime, as far as to give that bump so we can retain and keep our good people that have stayed with us through a very, very difficult time. Also asking for 7 new maintenance positions. We have maintained our properties with 21 individuals. Several are going to retire. I'm not sure that we can even find 7 positions, but we need 7 as far as, again, it comes to that comparability of what we're seeing in other districts of like size in maintaining our buildings. And we do maintain our buildings. Need to put back the deferred amount that we did not place in the employee insurance fund last year of $3.6 million. We need to replace that because we want to make sure that we do not have to increase in premiums for our employees. That was one time out, and we need to put that back in there. Looking at where we are with devices and teacher devices, much of our hardware is aging, and finding the situation we were in this year and the continued need, technology made the difference because of many of our students either were in a virtual setting all year or those that were having to move from remote to make the connection with their classrooms. And so that's what we must do to make sure that we refresh many of our aging devices. You see the summer roofing program, the recommendation, we need to get on a cycle, a 10-year cycle, so that we're not hit with big emergencies of replacing roofs. When you look at just some of the roof square footage across the county, we just completed a $2 million roofing project before the warranty ran out at Wilson Central High School. Replaced a Mount Juliet Middle School gymnasium roof because of leaks. And so this is something that, again, it's thoughtful. It's very deliberate and intentional as far as spreading it out, so it's not something that, based on emergency replacements, that you know what's coming up and can cycle through. It's no secret that we need to purchase land. We are growing, and they're still coming. And if you keep up with any of the news as far as that, we are a very desirable place to relocate, and our schools are part of the attraction. Make no secret, we're in the top 5% in the state in performance, even in spite of this year, as far as by what we're looking at just with our own assessments right now. And we did go through the state assessments this last month, but we're in the bottom 5% when you look at per pupil allocation. And again, I don't want anyone to confuse that what we're seeing, this commission, and I've said it publicly, and I speak at a lot of meetings. We had visitors from all over the country here a summer ago, and they couldn't get over our facilities and what our students had access to, and they were talking about maintaining buildings that were 80 to 100 years old. And if you've traveled through the Midwest and in the upper Northeast, you know what I'm talking about. You know, Mr. Ginger, I know that, you've seen some, particularly New England. They maintain them, but they have some age on them. Maybe historical, that might be better. And again, if recommendation, you'll see the West Wilson Middle School repair, rebuild, and the gap. The possibility, ladies and gentlemen, that, if you look at what we've built in the last 3 years, we've built an elementary school, Springdale, a middle school, and then Green Hill High School. And we're going to max there. While we're in the process of rebuilding 2 new schools, Stoner Creek and West Wilson Middle School, what if we increase the capacity as far as the numbers at those 2 schools and look at particularly an additional wing at West Wilson Middle School as opposed to looking at, and maybe deferring, 2 to 3 years of building another school? And that might be something we need to start looking at. We can't, in many places, go up another floor. Gladeville Elementary School is another one. Was that last week that you did the walkthrough? We built 7 new classrooms on there 4 years ago, 4.5 years ago. They're full. We're now in closets. When you look between Stewart's Ferry and Central Pike, that is now the new hot spot, and they are coming. And Gladeville Elementary doesn't have the capacity, but what if we were to build a wing as far as to increase it by 7 to 8 classrooms? And even when we're looking at construction costs, again, and it's no secret that with what is happening right now within materials and other costs, we got word, I guess that was about 2 to 3 weeks ago, of a building project. It was in Lincoln County, a small project, mind you, but it was coming in at $300 a square foot. And that took our breath. So again, the possibility of looking at expanding while we're building new buildings, of expanding that capacity. And the White Fleet, we have the White Fleet that for particularly our itinerant personnel, technology, maintenance, needs to be upgraded. They're so old right now that we've even given them some lovely nicknames, simply because that we just pray that they're going to start. But that's something that we need to look at. And the final thing on the needs assessment are the PTAC units, and those that, I've been chastised for this, but I don't know any other term to call them, but they're motel units that were placed. We have a little over 625 of those units. Very cost savings when they were initially purchased, but they're also, no secret as far as what they were intended for. We've had 2 to catch fire at Mount Juliet Elementary School, and fortunately we did not have students that were harmed or in harm's way when that occurred. In fact, one was on a weekend. And when you look at the number across the district, quite a few, but I also have to remind you, this was something that was requested by a board member because wanting to make sure that our students are safe, and safety is first and foremost. But we've had 2 units to catch fire out of 625. If you look at the replacement, it's expensive. And so you would do so many per year to replace that. All the new construction, these units are not in any of the new constructed buildings, so I just want to make a point with that. So when you look at this critical need, we're at a point that hoping and very respectfully requesting that this commission will consider, particularly for our classified staff, looking at maintenance so we can continue maintaining our buildings, replacing that $3.6 million that needs to go back into that employees insurance fund, and Chromebooks, and on down through there. And I feel like I've really gone through fast. I think I had an hour and a half the other night. So, any questions, or have I thoroughly confused you?
The ESSER $2 and $3, the expenditures, did the approved expenditures, were they in here? Did I,
It should be in the very back as far as, I don't know how it was printed off, but if you'll go to the very, under miscellaneous, do you have a tab for that?
Yes, ma'am.
Mike? And then if you'll go, you'll see one that says at the very top, ESSER 2 budget. And
I don't believe I had that.
I don't have it either.
you don't have it either?
No, ma'am.
Okay, well, I will make sure that you get copies of that, as far as, because I think it's important that you have it so you can see how we're using those dollars. In my, I mean, you know, you're going through the same thing at the special school district. They're restricted, they have to be approved, but we're trying to defer as much as what we've normally brought before this commission in our budget, that we can defer for 2 to 3 years, particularly textbooks.
Dr. Wright, I don't believe any of us have that. It's not even in our
Okay.
notebooks.
There's a copy machine, I'd go get this right now, but I will make sure that everyone has a copy of this, because I think it's important information for you to have. The only thing that we don't have yet, and Mike, you don't either yet, is the ESSER 3, because that's been extended to August, but, you know, they're putting some really strong restrictions.
I didn't know if you had what you were going to submit or a portion of that.
As far as
You're gonna
for ESSER
submit
3,
For approval.
we've already started on the learning loss piece as far as that submission, because that's where they're really trying to promote some of their own programming. Did I say that respectfully enough?
If you don't mind, get that for us while we're going to the next meeting.
Okay, Annette,
Copy machine.
is there,
There may be somebody in the
It should
finance.
be, hold on, probably could tell us where, thank you.
What we need,
Can we do copies?
I think I can get some, the copy machine is, always happens when you're trying to do something like this.
and
Down, but I think I can put.
I'm going to give you a copy of the budget too. We are required to provide summer school this summer. So I want you to see as far as what's allocated for that too, because summer school is a requirement now by the state.
That's what I'm saying.
So, anything else?
All right.
Thank you.
Make sure we know there's no vote asked and no vote taken. No vote asked, no vote taken.
Wendell, I believe, there was a question you asked last week, and I hope it was,
That's the one he's
because I
in.
put it in my notes.
Oh, yeah, I've given them.
You asked about the growth last year and how it was used, and going back over the growth that we were given, we used that to help cover that deficit as well. And really, when we got the hit with the 1.6 in June, that growth is what helped us meet that hole in the budget, but that's how it was used. I made sure I had notes from that.
Dr. Wright, one more question.
Yes, sir.
In the very back in your miscellaneous, about the last page, is this a proposed increase?
Show me which, I don't know.
Saying the proposed Wilson County tax rate?
No, that was, no. That was,
And I see a 2.1 and a 1.9.
that was a question that had been asked, what if, and it was that the one that shows surrounding counties?
No,
It's not, okay.
just this.
How about tax increase?
And he, you know, he's,
No, we're not asking for a tax increase. No.
That was the example on the bottom.
yeah, he has been.
Clever about got struck by lightning.
I think it was just the math.
No, he's showing a short sheet.
Let's see, Diane's here, but she didn't.
Thank you, sir.
Oh, we were asked, what would it look like? And so we've put that in there as far as looking at the tax rates surrounding counties. And if we were looking at because it was asked, it would be $145 a year on a $300,000 home. And it's only in there for information only. We're not advocating. Not at all.
Yeah.
Thank you.